Maryland is clearly a place of innovation and entrepreneurship. So talk to us about some of the strategies that you, and I see, we got Secretary Anderson who we'll be talking to here in a few minutes.
Absolutely.
That you're focused on to both sustain that, but more important, to expand it.
That's right.
For people who have not had that opportunity.
That's exactly right. And because, entrepreneurship, it's the backbone of an economy. It's the foundation, because it's not just the largest employers. The largest employers are small businesses. Our state's largest employers are people who are the grinders. But also, you want to have a culture where we celebrate that kind of innovation, where we celebrate that kind of work, and we invest in it. I mean, it's one of the reasons, frankly, why I think TEDCO is so important. And I want to give you a shout out for your leadership as well.
I appreciate you.
For everything you continue to do for the state and beyond. Because it defines what it means essentially to have a public-private partnership, knowing how every asset and facet of the society must be involved and engaged inside of this work. And so when you think about the unique assets that Maryland does have, I mean, we've got 55 colleges and universities here in the state of Maryland, 16 community colleges in the state of Maryland alone, 4 HBCUs in the state of Maryland alone. We've got dozens of military facilities. The highest percentage of people with TS clearances are in the state of Maryland, in the entire country, right? So we got the highest educated population in the state of Maryland. So this is a place that has so many different foundational assets that it only behooves us that we really want to make sure we are centering and focus on supporting our entrepreneurs, supporting our risk takers, because they really do serve as the foundation for everything we're trying to get done.
So let's double on that. And then bring it to those populations that hadn't had the chances that you had, that I've had, and we see a lot of them here, a lot of them in what about those underrepresented communities? How do we get at those? And what are, some things that I know your organization, your administration, and again, Secretary Anderson and others are doing to help that?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, before I ran for governor, so one, I had never run for public office before in my life. And then I was an Army officer for a while. I led soldiers in combat. I came back. I started a business. I ran one of the largest poverty fighting organizations in the country. And then one day I was like, I want to run for governor. And then kind of decided to run for governor, and it just worked out. But it's one of these things where, so I come from a philosophy and I come from a mindset of an entrepreneur. Right. That's been my training. And so when I think about the type of things that were necessary and required, I know when I started my own business, and I had a successful exit in 2017. But I think about what were the initial challenges that we saw for entrepreneurs, and it's things like, for example, getting basic access to capital. Right? Having your friends and family round, right? The first stroke of capital. Here's the problem. Not everybody has the same friends. And not everybody has the same family. And so immediately when you're talking about just getting a friends and family round of capital, you already have limitations because people are just coming from different baselines, and which means you have different margins of not just success, but different margins for failure.
Amen.
When you come on board. You also have situations where it just becomes more complicated. For people to be able to navigate. How am I getting my permits? Where do I have to register? How am I helping to find employees? And so one thing that we've done with our administration is, for the first time in our state's history, we now have an ombudsman who's actually supporting our small businesses, our MBEs, basically making sure they have someone who can help to walk them through the process. Because do you know who naturally has ombudsman? Large corporations. They're called lobbyists, right? So they already naturally have a lot of these built-in assets that a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs by nature do not have. And so what we've tried to do is just spend our time and our energies and resources to be able to make sure that our small businesses, our entrepreneurs, our risk takers are getting the same levels of support that anybody else would get who is trying to build something that is going to grow and contribute to our state's economy.
I don't know if it was something, but if you think about you starting and running for governor, that's entrepreneurial stuff, because entrepreneurship is about risk taking.
Yeah, it's a bad business model, though. I'm sorry, that might be true. I don't know any business model whose goal is to raise a bunch of money and then by the end of it be broke. Which is kind of like what a campaign does, right? A campaign, you want to end your balance at zero. You don't want debt, but you don't want to know you left money on the table. So all I want to say is everything I learned about entrepreneurship when I was running a business, when you go into a campaign world, it's like, yeah, that's a different kind of business model. There's no one I wouldn't recommend. It's not transferable. I'll put it that way.
So a lot of what we have here, Governor, are small businesses.
Yeah.
Obviously, the 1 to 2 person shops. So talk a little bit even more. You've kind of given some thoughts of already, but you talked about the ombudsman, other things that you guys are thinking about or doing or launching that's really going to help, particularly in a competitive marketplace. With technology is such a big part of that.
Huge part of it. And by the way, seriously, we want all of you in Maryland, if you're not there already, because I really do believe that this is going to be the tech center for the country over this next decade, and I'll explain to you why. A lot of the natural assets that we've had for our economic growth have been really concentrated on 3 areas. In Maryland, we call it, it's the eds, the feds, and the meds, right? Those are things that Maryland has really leveraged historically when it comes to economic growth. The challenge is that those oftentimes, while they're important and while we are going to defend our legacy industries, they almost are like they're blue chip assets, right? They're going to grow, never too much, never go down too much, but what it means is that you don't really experience the same kind of economic growth that you can have when you're actually taking risks in new type of industries and new type of growth industries. And when you look at some of our other comps, the reason they won in other specific industries is because they've been intentional. And that's really where this next phase of Maryland's economy, with our Secretary of Commerce, with our downtown partnership, with TEDCO, is how are we thinking differently about being intentional? So, for example, when we're talking about things like IT, and when I talk about IT, that includes things like cyber and AI and quantum. And the reason that we are going to make sure that we're investing in these types of industries and additional technological industries is because if Maryland really is the home of NIST, which we are, the home of U.S. Cyber Command, the home of the NSA, the home of the Naval Academy, tell me why we should not be the global capital of cyber, right? Everything is linked to the state of Maryland. So therefore, we need to make sure our investments are actually placed there. We need to make sure that we have permitting and regulatory reform to make it easier for business to be able to grow and thrive and stay inside of the state of Maryland. That we want to make sure we are investing in things like aerotech and defense tech industries. We want to make sure we're investing in life sciences and data science industries. We want to make sure we're investing in our entrepreneurs and our technology ecosystem, our ed tech companies. These are companies that have long-standing and real green shoots in areas for economic growth, but you have to make sure that you have a state that supports it. You have to make sure you have a state that supports its entrepreneurs. You have to make sure you have a state that makes it easier for people to be able to grow and thrive. And that's exactly what we're bringing here for the state of Maryland for this next decade.
I love it. So to get ready for that, obviously that takes people.
Yes.
It takes a workforce.
Yeah.
So what are you guys, how are you thinking about getting folks ready for jobs that are here today and the ones that's going to be available in the future?
It's a great question, Troy, because I mean, part of the way we think about it is it means you actually have to listen to CEOs. And you actually have to listen to the employers. Because when you listen to CEOs and employers, they'll tell you what they're looking for. And we're really proud of the fact that Maryland has the most educated population in the entire country. Again, 44 institutions of higher education, public and private, 16 community colleges. We can go through the whole line again. But the thing I know is that we also kept on hearing from CEOs is, but that's not necessarily everything we need when it comes to our talent pipeline. And so that's why we've been very deliberate and very clear in saying that, listen, we have some of the best four-year institutions in America, but we are going to end this lie in our state that every single one of our students need to attend one of them in order to be economically successful, right? And that means investing in a K-12 platform that's also focusing on things like trade programs and apprenticeship programs and getting people into proper workforce employment pipelines. And so during our time, we've been in office now for 22 months, we have not, who's counting? In 14 days. We have not doubled, we have not tripled, we have quadrupled the amount of people in apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship slots in the state of Maryland. That we now are the first state, we're now the first state in the country that now has a service year option for all of our high school graduates. That every one of our high school graduates have a chance to have a year of service to the state of Maryland, where they're working with not just nonprofit partners and governmental partners, but private sector partners. And it's become a tremendous workforce development tool. It's also become a place where I believe deeply that in this time of this political divisiveness and vitriol, that service will save us. And if you get people who are working together on big projects and big tasks, you're going to have people who are willing to fight for each other across political lines or where they call home. And so I'm a big believer that when we're talking about workforce development, give people the task, give people the tools, give people the connections, and then you're creating real pathways for long-term economic success for every person that calls the state of Maryland home.
So as he wrap, so you mentioned eds, feds, and meds.
Yes.
So, but I'll translate cybersecurity and healthcare and life science are big parts of what
Absolutely
doing what we are. What's that go for? What's that look like go forward?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. One is, and I kind of look at it like almost like a larger ecosystem where you can have the whales. But the interesting thing about, larger maritime ecosystems is where the whales are is then you then have the plankton and the other elements who then end up feeding off of the larger whales inside of that marine, in terms of that, marine life ecosystem. I very much look at that's how Maryland is built out, right? We have the whales, and some of the whales include the federal agencies that I spoke about. We have the whales, and that includes things like when you're talking about defense tech and that kind of things, you're looking at the future of what is Lockheed and all these larger players, what is their role? And you look at, everything from biotech, look at the role of like an AstraZeneca and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of the whales. What we now need to do is making sure you're fostering ecosystems that people can continually feed off of them.
Yep.
That's how you create an entrepreneurial culture. And so when we're talking about what is the future of that and those type of industries, it is doing a better job of being able to make it easier for people to enter into those spaces who can then benefit from having the whales around them, making it easier for people to get access to capital so they can actually take their ideas and support them and turn them into long-term economic growth plans, making sure that you're creating the ecosystem that people want to come to the state of Maryland. And that means being, absolutely dogged in the way that we recruit, dogged in the way that we retain, making sure that people know that this isn't just going to be a place where you're going to have specific economic entree into specific industries, but also it's a better place to be able to raise your family, a better place to be able to recruit employees, a better place to know that, that frankly, for people who are not from the state of Maryland, if you want to have an environment that is, that doesn't just believe in measurements of economic growth, but also, believes that you want to create a positive ecosystem for families and communities to be able to grow and thrive together, that Maryland is where you want to be. But this means, how do we have that same type of aggressive approach targeted in terms of specific industries, but aggressive when it comes to the way we are recruiting and retaining talent and making sure that business and the business community knows that that this is going to be the most hospitable place for any entrepreneur to want to be able to grow there and achieve their dreams.
Governor George.
Yes, sir.
Always appreciate you.
Always appreciate you and your leadership. And I mean what I say. If you are here in Maryland, I want to let you know how much we appreciate you, how thankful we are for you, and how much we need you to win. And we're going to do anything in our power to make sure that you win. If you're not here in Maryland yet, get in early, because I want to be clear, this is going to be Maryland's decade. And you want to, it's better to buy in on things early now, because a decade from now, it's going to be a much more complicated endeavor to try to get in on Maryland. But I mean, what we say is, this is going to be the best place in the world to change the world. If you want to be part of something big, if you want to know that you have an administration who is not just going to see you and hear you, but support you, come find us. Come talk to us. Come talk to our team. Choose Maryland, because this is going to be a time when I really believe that a decade from now, every other state in the country is going to say, I want to have a decade like Maryland just had. And we're going to make that happen.